Why is it that some people glide through life collecting allies, opportunities, and admiration without ever raising their voice? Why do others, smarter, more qualified, even better intentioned, struggle to be noticed, constantly explaining themselves, justifying their value, begging for recognition? The harsh truth is this: the world is not moved by merit, it is moved by structure, and those who understand how to shape that structure don't need to ask, they are chosen. We live in an age obsessed with self-expression. Speak your truth, be authentic, assert your boundaries. But let me ask you this: when was the last time being authentic guaranteed influence? When did saying more actually give you more control? Influence is not granted to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person who designed the room. This is where most people fail. They think influence is about persuasion, about being convincing, charismatic, persuasive. But real influence operates long before words are spoken. It happens in the setup, not in the speech. It's not about what you say, it's about what others feel they must choose. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, not as a manipulator but as a master strategist of human nature. He wasn't interested in theatrical power, the kind that needs to be seen and heard to be respected. He was obsessed with structural power, the kind that rearranges the environment until obedience feels voluntary. The kind of power that never knocks on the door. It builds the house and waits for others to walk in. Let me give you a hard truth. Most of your decisions aren't yours. They're the result of environments, narratives, and pressures set in motion by people you'll never meet. You think you chose. You think you decided. But the menu was curated long before you arrived. And you picked from it, like everyone else, believing you had control. That's the illusion. And Machiavelli didn't just see through it. He learned how to craft it. This video isn't about making you more persuasive. It's about making you untouchable. You'll stop chasing. You'll stop convincing. You'll stop negotiating from weakness. Instead, you'll learn to sculpt situations where others want what you want, because they think it was their idea. Where people act in your favor, not out of obligation, but out of instinct. Where you become necessary, not because of what you say, but because of the void you fill. Once you understand the psychology of invisible influence, everything changes. The way you move through conversations, the way you structure opportunities, the way you position yourself in the social ecosystem. You stop competing for attention and start engineering necessity. And it all begins with a single shift in perspective, from seeking to control people to learning how to control the context in which they make decisions. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said, "Whoever controls circumstances controls outcomes." Not with force, not with deception, but with elegance, with precision, with strategy. So, are you ready to unlearn everything you thought you knew about power? Are you ready to stop being reactive and start being the one who shapes the terrain others must walk on? Then let's begin by uncovering the invisible framework that holds the key to all influence, the principle of invisible influence. Influence is not about power, not in the way you've been taught. Power screams, influence whispers. Power demands, influence designs. The most powerful figures in history were rarely the loudest. They were the ones who mastered the subtle geometry of the situation. That's what Machiavelli understood better than anyone. You don't need to control people. You only need to control the context in which they act. What does that mean in practice? It means that real influence happens before a single word is spoken. It happens when you decide who gets access, when you predict what they'll need before they know it, when you present choices that all serve your objective, no matter what they pick. This is not persuasion. This is preemption. This is invisible influence. Let's break it down into the three core pillars, what Machiavelli would have called psychological warfare by elegance. 1. Control of access. Become rare, become desired. Machiavelli knew that power dilutes in abundance. The more available you are, the less you're valued. Why? Because human psychology is wired to crave scarcity. We chase what we can't easily reach. We assign worth to what is hard to attain. So the first move in invisible influence is strategic distance. You don't make yourself available, you make yourself significant. You manage your presence like a luxury brand. Rare, desired, untouchable. And here's the secret. This isn't about arrogance, it's about perception. You create controlled access not to repel others, but to signal that proximity to you is a privilege. You become the scarce resource that others must calibrate around. And suddenly, people start adjusting their behavior. Not because you asked, but because your presence reshaped the rules. 2. Management of needs. Become the answer. Before the question exists. This is predictive influence, the ability to see 3 steps ahead, to solve problems that haven't emerged yet. You want to be the person others turn to when things break, but more than that, you want to be the person they trust to prevent the breakdown in the first place. Machiavelli warned rulers never to wait for the storm to hit. He who prepares during peace rules during chaos. This applies to you. Influence is anticipating the emotional, social, or strategic needs of those around you, before they're aware of them. And once you fulfill a hidden need, you become psychologically irreplaceable. People may not even realize why they feel drawn to you, but the answer is simple. You solved a problem they didn't know they had. 3. Architecture of choices. Control the frame. Control the outcome. The third pillar is the most deceptive and the most powerful. It's the ability to create scenarios where every option leads back to your goal. You're not forcing anyone. You're simply narrowing the field. You don't say, choose me. You say, here are your 3 options, all of which were hand-picked to benefit you. This is where Machiavelli's brilliance becomes lethal. He understood that freedom is often an illusion. Most people feel empowered when given choices, but those choices are rarely as free as they think. By controlling the structure of options, you allow others to feel in control while guiding them exactly where you want. It's strategic freedom, the appearance of agency wrapped around a predetermined outcome. Together, these 3 pillars form the architecture of invisible influence. You're not pushing, you're not chasing, you're not selling. You're creating gravitational pull, quiet, constant, irresistible. This is how the most influential people operate, not with noise, but with precision, not with force, but with design. They don't argue, they don't compete. They craft the circumstances and let others step willingly into their plans. But this is just the foundation. To truly master this power, you must learn the laws that govern it. Specific strategies, forged in political fire, tested in court intrigues, and still applicable to your workplace, your relationships, your daily decisions. In the next section, we dive deep into the 5 laws of Machiavellian influence. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Influence doesn't begin when you open your mouth. It begins the moment others realize they need you but can't reach you on demand. It begins when your presence becomes a resource. And like every scarce resource, its value increases every time you say no. Law 1. Be necessary, not available. This is the first rule of real-world influence. People chase what withdraws. The psychology is brutally simple. If you're always accessible, you're taken for granted. If you're always agreeable, your agreement becomes meaningless. If you're always around, your presence blends into the background. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Princes who were too eager to please were devoured by the very people they tried to win over. Why? Because humans instinctively equate scarcity with status. And so, the one who makes himself rare becomes a magnet. It's not about being cold. It's about being calculated. Strategic absence sharpens desire. When you control your availability, you don't diminish your influence, you amplify it. You stop reacting to invitations and start issuing them. You condition others to see your presence as an event, not a given. Think about it. When was the last time you truly valued someone who was always available? We worship the rare. We chase the distant. We bend for the inaccessible. That's not cynicism. That's psychology. So stop flooding the market with your presence. Pull back. Let people feel the absence, and watch how quickly they recalibrate their attention. Law 2. Solve problems they don't know they have. The second law is where real influence solidifies. Don't just be useful, be prophetic. Don't just react, preempt. The most powerful individuals in any environment are those who solve problems before they are recognized as problems. That's when you stop being helpful and start being indispensable. Machiavelli wrote, "Whoever prepares in peace rules in chaos." This is more than a political principle. It's a psychological law. When you anticipate a person's needs, especially the ones they can't yet articulate, you become a silent authority in their life. Not because you demanded their loyalty, but because you became the only one who truly saw them. Influence is emotional before it's logical. People remember who saved them, but they are bound to those who saved them from storms they didn't even see coming. Imagine this. You walk into a room and offer a solution no one knew they needed. At first, they're surprised, then grateful, then dependent. You didn't impose your value, you revealed it. That's power, real power, invisible, intimate, unshakable. To master this law, you must become a student of subtlety. Observe patterns, predict disruptions, offer answers in silence. Influence doesn't shout, it listens, and when the moment is right, it acts with surgical precision. Together, these two laws form the base of gravitational influence. One withdraws to increase demand. The other advances with foresight to become irreplaceable. You become the fixed point others must orbit. Not because you force them, but because, without you, they feel exposed. But influence isn't just about being needed. It's about getting others to defend your ideas, to champion your agenda as if it were their own. The next level of power is not just anticipation, but co-creation. Planting ideas in such a way that others water them, that's what we'll explore in the next section.